Welcome to today's tutorial. In this video, we're going to build an online leaderboard system using Java. Whether you're designing a game or creating an app, leaderboards can greatly enhance user engagement. Let's dive into the world of competitive scoring. First, let's outline what we want to create. Our leaderboard will store player scores, allow players to submit scores, and retrieve the top scores. We'll also make this leaderboard available online using a RESTful service. For our project, we'll use Java with Spring Boot for the REST API, Hibernate for data persistence, and PostgreSQL as our database. Start by setting up your Spring Boot project with the following dependencies: Spring Web, Spring Data JPA, and PostgreSQL driver. Next, let's set up our PostgreSQL database. Create a database named leaderboard_db and a user with the necessary permissions. Make sure PostgreSQL is running and you have access to it. Now that our database is ready, let's configure our application.properties to connect to PostgreSQL. You need to set the data source URL, username, and password for your database. Let's create an entity class to represent a player. This class will contain the player's ID, name, and score. Use JPA annotations to map this class to our database. Now, let's create a repository interface extending JPA repository. This will provide us with methods to interact with the database. Next, we need a service class that will contain our business logic. This class will use our player repository to handle the leaderboard operations. We are almost there. Now, let's create a REST controller to handle incoming requests. This controller will handle post requests to submit scores and get requests to retrieve the leaderboard. With our REST controller in place, it's time to run our application. You can do this by running the main method in your Spring Boot application or using Maven. Once it's running, we can use a tool like Postman to test our API. First, let's test the post endpoint. Create a new player using Postman by making a post request to http://localhost 8080/API/leaderboard with the JSON body containing the player name and score. You should receive a response with the created player object, including its ID. Repeat this process to add more players and their respective scores. Now, let's test the get endpoint to retrieve the top players. Make a get request to http://localhost 8080/API/leaderboard. You should see the top scores listed as a JSON array. Congratulations! You have successfully built a basic online leaderboard system with Java. This foundational setup can be further enhanced with authentication, pagination, and more. You now have the skills to integrate competitive scoring into your applications and games. Before we wrap things up, let's briefly discuss some potential improvements. You might consider adding user authentication to associate scores with specific users. You could also implement features like score challenges or visual scoreboards. If you enjoyed this tutorial, don't forget to like and subscribe for more programming content. Leave your questions and suggestions in the comments below as we'd love to hear from you. Happy coding!